A show like Rick and Morty has sparked more conversation than just about any other cartoon out there. Fans can't help but try and figure out every little secret, and we don't blame them. But some of these theories about our favorite nice guy, Doofus Rick, might just change the way you see everything. So while we await the arrival of another season, let's jump into these theories and see which ones are more realistic than the others.
Time to go, Morty.
If you've ever watched Rick and Morty and come across Doofus Rick, then you know that he is not a favorite among all the other Ricks in the multiverse.
Jerry, you know this guy eats poop, right? Hey, I don't eat poop!
So, some fans have wondered why the Ricks even bring him along on missions in the first place. Specifically in the episode Close Encounters of the Rick Kind. The Council of Ricks sends Doofus Rick along with a gang of others to track down C-137 at the Smith household. Some fans have begun to wonder if he was brought along for the very reason that the other Ricks hate him. Because Ricks are so prone to fighting, the idea is that Doofus Rick is invited along to act as a sort of lightning rod for all the other Ricks' insults and hatred, so that they don't fight with each other and get the job done. Along with that, Doofus Rick forms a very special bond with Jerry that none of the other Ricks do, and in doing so serves as a great distraction to keep Jerry from getting in the way.
That's pretty harsh, sir.
So report me. Nobody gives a f***.
We've always wondered why exactly the other Ricks have so much hatred towards Doofus Rick. Sure, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and the Ricks respect intelligence, but man, they really loathe him. And it's possible that he does have some interesting dietary preferences.
You know he eats his own shit, right? Oh my god, this is rich!
But the Ricks would be the first to defend someone's right to do whatever they want in life. So what is it about Doofus Rick that they just can't reconcile with? See, they believe that the reason the other Ricks can't stand Doofus Rick is because he's the only one of them who's actually happy. Rick is notoriously unhappy, and this is something that drives all other Ricks as well, except Doofus Rick, who isn't weighed down by the same all-knowing misery of his counterparts. He can actually find joy in simple things. So maybe the reason that they all have it out for him is not because he's so much worse than them, but because they're jealous of his ability to be blissfully ignorant.
You're frustrating me.
All this talk about Doofus Rick being less intelligent than the others has led some fans to question if this is actually true or not. Being a Rick, he has to be at least a little smart, if not quite up to the same standards as the others. And we see him doing some pretty cool science in Close Encounters of the Rick Kind. Could any old doofus have made those delicious-looking ovenless brownies out of just some old chemicals? Didn't think so. Those aren't the brownies of a dumb man, oh no. Just a man with priorities that differ from the usual Rick stuff like conquering the galaxy and causing chaos wherever he goes. Some fans believe that Doofus Rick is actually the most emotionally intelligent Rick of them all. And that doesn't make him stupid, just different. He is seen to really care about people, even Jerry, who no one else on the show can really be bothered with.
What do you think?
You're fired.
He goes out of his way to make Jerry happy. Once again, we come back to the brownies, and is actually there to listen and empathize with his struggles. But because all the other Ricks see the world divided into people who are too smart to be happy and people who are too dumb to know any better, they see him as a doofus, which he really is not.
Checkmate!
Did you ever wonder why Doofus Rick is the way he is? So many of the Ricks that we've seen so far are pretty similar. What made Doofus Rick different? Sure, in infinite timelines, there are infinite possibilities, and there was bound to be some variations every few hundred Ricks or so, but why is Doofus Rick so different than the rest? Some fans have been digging around for answers, and they think they may have come up with the exact reason why. But to understand, we have to go all the way back to the very first episode of Rick and Morty. Remember the Megaseeds? The giant and very pointy seeds that Rick makes Morty conceal inside his...
My butt.
Put them way up inside there as far as they can fit.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
The seeds that enable those who consume them, or accidentally let them dissolve, you know where, with super intelligence for a short period of time.
The square root of pi, Morty, go!
1.772453885. Whoa!
And then as they wear off, cause loss of motor and brain functions? Those Megaseeds? Well, some fans believe that Doofus Rick is actually just a regular Rick who overdosed on Megaseeds and caused permanent damage to his brain and appearance.
Hey, I'm not judging, just like to shoot straight. I'm a man of science.
There's another idea out there about what makes Doofus Rick so different from all the others, but be careful because this one might just break your heart a little bit. In Season 3, Episode 1, we were given a little glimpse into what might have caused Rick to turn into the callous and self-absorbed Rick we know and love today. And that was, of course, the memory in which a child Beth and Rick's wife Diane were horribly assassinated by an unnamed future Rick before our Rick's eyes. While we know that Rick claims that this was all a lie, it is pretty unbelievable that Rick would lie about his painful backstory in order to mask his suffering. So let's go with that idea for a minute, shall we? Some fans out there believe that Doofus Rick is the way he is because he never had a Diane or Beth, and therefore never went through the trauma of losing them so tragically. And because of that, he never hardened to the world like all the other Ricks did. Doofus Rick has actually proven to still be very intelligent, but without suffering such a huge loss, he just went about his happy, normal life, oblivious to all the other Ricks' painful histories.
Okay, getting darker.
We've talked a lot so far about how Doofus Rick might be the most kind, emotionally in touch, and happiest version of Rick. So now let's take a dramatic turn and discuss the possibilities that he is actually the most evil of all the Ricks. That's right, you heard me. This fan theory wonders if Doofus Rick is actually the evil Rick who is killing all the other Ricks and taking their Mortys to build his terrifying human shield. It's mentioned that Doofus Rick never got married and had children. Well, that actually sounds like something the smartest Rick would do, knowing full well that having a family means emotional attachment. Also, some fans believe that the entire evil robot Rick and Evil Morty hoopla was a diversion that allowed the real evil Rick, aka Doofus Rick, to infiltrate Rick C-137's house, gain control and power over his Jerry, and lay the groundwork for his real evil doing.
You're making a bigger deal out of this than it is.
While there isn't much in the episode that explicitly links Doofus Rick and Evil Morty, fans can't help but tie the two together over and over again. Like in this theory that suggests that Doofus Rick had actually been working for Evil Morty the whole time, or at least under his control. Again, a Rick like Doofus Rick can get away with so much simply because he is totally tossed aside by all the other Ricks, who only acknowledge him in order to make fun of him. So it makes sense that Evil Morty would choose him as his subject to control, having him totally and innocently infiltrate the citadel of Ricks and all of their dealings without ever being a suspect. In the episode, when Evil Rick is killed in the Morty Dome, Doofus Rick is one of the first on the scene and jumps at the chance to examine the body himself. Why would he do that when so far he hasn't appeared to be that involved in the whole thing? Some fans believe he was trying to get close to the body in order to either hide something or tamper with it before the others got to inspect it themselves. Also, at the very end of the episode, he shows back up at the Smith house, which seems innocent, but might have been more sinister than we know.
Oh, you like that, huh? I bet that really blows your mind.
There's nothing more satisfying than when details from a show line up perfectly, as though the creators of them actually went out of their way to put them there. This theory doesn't do that. It tries. And we think it's still a pretty fun possibility too. Some fans out there think that Doofus Rick was a totally normal Rick, but he used the golden microscope from the Devil's Shop in the episode Something Wicked This Way Comes, and was never the same.
Your sister's boss gave me a microscope that would have made me retarded.
Ooh, oh boy, Rick.
Some think that the Rick who would become Doofus Rick lives in the same town as C-137, but in another dimension. So at some point, he stumbled across the Devil's store and got a little careless with the microscope.
Boo! Not cool!
You might wonder how it would be possible for the smartest man in the universe to fall for such a trick. But hey, accidents happen, and it is the devil after all. And of course, how could he still be smart enough to make those ovenless brownies? Well, maybe he already had the recipe memorized and was cooking from memory. We'll never know.
Okay, things are getting out of hand.
One of the most popular theories out there once again links Doofus Rick with our old pal Evil Morty. Fans can't stop talking about the possibility that Evil Morty was actually Doofus Rick's original Morty. In Close Encounters of the Rick Kind, Rick C-137 makes the comment that he is the Rickest Rick, and Morty is the Mortiest Morty, of all the versions of them out there, implying that there is a whole spectrum of Rickness and Mortiness across the multiverse, which led some fans to conclude that there must be a version of the pair that includes the Rickest Morty and the Mortiest Rick. And who would the Rickest Morty be? Well, Evil Morty, of course. He shares a handful of terrifying traits with his grandfather, superintelligence and total disregard for human life to name a few. And if that is true, it seems only natural that the Mortiest Rick would be none other than the naive and earnest Doofus Rick. Of course, Doofus Rick does specifically say that he never had kids, which would mean that this Morty would never have been born. But we've already seen that it's possible to remove someone's memories and have them be none the wiser, which sounds like just the thing that the Rickest Morty would do to his Rick, doesn't it?
Yeah, murmur it up, D-bags.
Some believe that Doofus Rick is actually a Rick body with a Morty brain. Let us explain. This theory states that Doofus Rick was not born the way he is now, but was actually the most evil Rick. Over the years, he developed his master plan and came to realize that he couldn't get away with it without a disguise. So he put his brain into his Morty's body and Morty's brain into his own body, creating both Evil Morty and Doofus Rick in one fell swoop. But they couldn't stay teamed up after all this, so he sent Doofus Rick off to be used as a spy and built himself a robotic Rick so as not to draw attention to himself. Why else would Evil Morty need to build himself the Morty shield in order to block his brainwaves if those brainwaves weren't actually Rick waves? Robot Rick doesn't emit any of his own, so they had to be coming from somewhere.
I know that's not a popular opinion. That's my 2 cents on the issue.
Oh, Rick and Morty, will we ever really understand you? What did you think of this list? Do you have any other Doofus Rick theories that you think we should know about? Let us know down below, and we hope you had fun watching this video.